Hi, it's your buddy Joe. I know it's been a few weeks. Both of you are probably wondering, where have I been? I've been here. And by here, I mean not just planet Earth, but living my life, doing the things that I do. I couldn't tell you, I couldn't itemize every single minute of the last few weeks. I can tell you, I had a few guests say, yeah, I don't want to be on the show, which is fine. Nobody owes me anything. I think the bigger thing is I kind of got a little bit depressed. Not like bad. I wasn't, contemplating an alternate reality. I just sort of, I don't feel like it. Part of that was depression, but part of it was me just doing different things. I've been auditioning for commercials a lot. I've been getting into stand-up more. I've been getting a lot of gigs. I've been getting some paid stand-up gigs, which I know it sounds like a really elementary thing to say, but I'm getting paid to do stand-up, which is kind of a big deal. Once in a while, that's nice, but I've had a steady string of them. It's kind of strange. It's the way it ought to be. I think enough of myself to deserve that kind of money, that kind of success, and frankly, a lot more. But it's a little strange because I'm not used to it. And now I'm sitting here going, I got to work a little harder here because I don't know. I got a little momentum here. I want to get out of second gear. I've just these little fits and starts of the stand up. I want to get beyond it. And then in doing those things, other things get squeezed out. And the talk show got a little bit squeezed out. Bigger picture stuff. The main reason I do the talk show is to ask people how they got into their line of work, because I'm always fascinated by that. I think choosing a line of work has been something that's been a little bit difficult for me over the years. And perhaps in the last month or so, I kind of broke through it. And maybe it's not such a mystifying thing anymore. Maybe it's just like, this is who I am. I'm doing that and I'm okay with it now. I've changed and I know these little intros are just something you skip over till you get to the interview. So we could go a lot deeper in this, but I'd rather not do it here. My guest this week, Christina Jobe. She is cool. She is a filmmaker, went to USC, got film school, the graduate, the master's. And then what does she do? She starts producing commercials. Is that why she went to USC Film School? No, but she's producing commercials anyway. She talks about that journey. And I was really surprised we went there early on. She was an Adventist, which is a religious religion. And she talks about her spiritual upbringing and how it was heading her in one direction and how she just kind of segued into another direction, but she did it kind of seamlessly. It wasn't one of those, hard ass religions. It was kind of like, well, we're going to point you this way, but you've got some latitude to do other things. And she took the latitude and she did other things. And then she dissects this show from a commercial production standpoint, which is another fascinating conversation that I hope you stick around for. So please enjoy this very enlightening conversation with Christina Jobe. Christina Jobe, welcome to Joe Dungan's talk show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Joe Dungan. Good. Having a good day.
Good. Yeah, it's cooled off too. We're shooting this in October, and it's that weird time of year in LA where people complain about the heat and the cold.
Yep, that's accurate.
Yep, the summer extends, and yet it's not warm enough to stay warm in the evening. So suddenly it goes down to a very frigid 55 degrees, and everybody panics because they can't find their parkas.
It's cold.
Yeah.
55 is cold.
Pardon?
Anything under 70 is chilly. Anything under 55 is genuinely cold.
Yeah. The rest of the world, if you think we're weather wimps, you're right. But then we have San Diego to look down on, where the weather is even milder. So anyway, let's get right to it. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Redlands, which is about an hour and a half east of Los Angeles.
The Inland Empire.
Yeah, the inland, the Empire of the Inland. The great 909 or 951 area codes.
I've always that name Inland Empire.
It was a marketing thing that didn't work, I think.
Yeah, and it stuck. That's the irony of it. It's a very lofty name for a place that's not empire-like.
It is inland.
This is true.
And maybe it's like the empire of like warehouses or empire of like manufacturing.
Empire of
It might have gotten shortened, like it might have been an empire of like sewage processing plants, but we missed that part. It just got shortened, and now we just say Inland Empire.
Your Honor, there wasn't enough room on the thing we were writing. That's why we had to leave that part off. if you had let us continue, we would have told the client Inland Empire of meth manufacturing. That's what we meant to say.
Well, Riverside kind of took that over, but yeah, we try.
Okay. And then did you want to get into film the whole time, even as a child, or when did that come about?
No, I was raised very conservatively religious. I was raised Seventh-day Adventist. Um, so I went to Adventist school. My parents were Adventists, went to church. And I always had an interest in like theatrical things. I always had an interest in photography. There was a religious TV station and I would volunteer. It never like I had a lot of interest, but I didn't know that it could be like an actual interest. That makes sense. So I never like as a kid, I would never have said like, oh, I want to direct movies or something. But I would spend like my Saturdays like filming like talk show with like three people on a very tiny soundstage talking about like diets and why like beans and rice are a complex carbohydrate or something. So
I can relate.
yeah.
Now, were your parents supportive, or did they just not care what you were doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it just didn't occur to anyone that I would actually pursue any of it, if that makes sense. Like I always had these little things and
Yeah.
volunteering at church is always good. So I was always encouraged in like whatever I was doing, but none of it ever seemed like a professional possibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it makes sense. Did you have siblings? I'm just wondering if they treated your siblings differently.
I have an older sister, and she's a bit quieter. She read a lot. She was a little more academic, um, and so she didn't have like a ton of like external hobbies. She's a lawyer now, so yeah, we were treated sort of the same, and we were just very different kids.
Yeah, you were the wild child having talk shows about complex carbohydrates.
Yeah, well, it wasn't my show. I was just camera two. My sister wanted more strictly academic environment, and then when I asked to go, my parents said no because, well, I'm sure it was like very expensive, but uh Friday night to Saturday night is like the Sabbath, which is like a Jewish Sabbath, but it's we're Christians who have the same Jewish Sabbath, if that makes sense. And so she wasn't supposed to go to school activities on Friday night or Saturday during the day. So they were like, it's cool for her because she's not a super social kid. She'll be fine. Whereas I was like a more social kid, and they're like, you're going to be if you can't go to the school dance or if you can't go to a football game. I don't know if they had football, but like a school activity, like I would have been upset. Whereas my sister was like way more chill about it.
So now, when you went to college, did you have filmmaking on your mind, or what was the first thing you studied in college?
So I like when I graduated from high school, I got the math and science award. So I went in and I thought I was pre-med. So I was like, the Adventists are very medical. Like we have the second largest private medical system in America. I think after like the Catholics or something.
Wow.
Which is weird because it's like a very small percentage of the population is Adventist. So a huge percentage of that population is in the medical field. So I just had a ton of exposure to medical. Like we didn't dissect the dead bodies, but we would go through a dissection of a body in a lab, like just in high school. And we had all of this access to medical stuff. That was just, we were just really well educated and exposed in that. So I went to college being like, I don't really want to write papers. I'm going to do this pre-med thing. I'll just be a doctor like everybody else, or a nurse or a technician or, all the gamut. I know the caterer at the hospital, like their kid went to my high school, like we knew everybody, and it's somehow medically affiliated. And so I took film classes. I needed to have a major because pre-med was a concentration. And I hated the chemistry department. They were assholes. Like not like there was one orgo teacher who was cool, organic chemistry teacher, but just in general the vibe was very like ugh. And so I was like, well, I like film, I love watching movies, I love TV, I'll just take film classes for fun, and then that can be my major. But I'm really like a pre-med is like what I am.
And that was okay. You didn't have to be a biology major or something. None of the life
It
science.
just mean I had to take way more classes than everybody. It's almost like having a double major. So
Yeah.
I had a pre-med concentration, and I picked up a minor in physics as like that was going to be my med school application like this girl can do science. And then on the side, I was taking all these film classes.
So you got a bachelor's in film.
So yeah, I have film theory and criticism. So we didn't make any films. It was just a lot of like watching black and white films and thinking about them. Yeah, but I had a rough time in college. I went from this like sort of small Christian community to New York City for college, and that was a really rough transition. And so, in some ways, it was good because by the time I was getting to the end of college, I was like, I don't want to do this again. Like, what do I really want to do? Like, I don't want to keep whatever this was not fun. I can't live my life like this. And so I think like I shadowed some doctors and I really thought about medicine and I thought about myself in medicine and I was just not that passionate. I wasn't not passionate, but I just wasn't. I was like, this is fine.
But it's a
And
lot of work to put in for something that you're just like, well, it's okay.
that's kind of the conclusion I came to of like, do I have 8 more years in me of just grinding, like not being excited, but just like really just like grinding to do it. And I was just like, I don't think so. So I took the MCATs and my scores were good for 3 years. So I told my parents I was taking a year off and I stayed in New York for a year with a couple of college friends. And then I just applied to a bunch of film schools and was like, oh, I think I'm
Now,
going to film school.
I want to unpack a couple of things here. Number one, how did your parents handle the fact that you were suddenly, bye medicine, I'm going to get into filmmaking?
My parents are like the best. They're just lovely people. I think there was a lot more chatter behind closed doors than what they were telling me. My dad is a doctor, but he loves his job. Like he absolutely loves his job. He's like an academic. He teaches residents. He got himself licensed to be an ultrasound tech because that's how he can look at joints better. Like he does a lot of stuff that's like he's good at it. He's passionate about it and he loves his job. And so I think a lot of parents are like, oh, it's good money or it's a steady job. You always need doctors, that kind of stuff. Like those aren't like passionate reasons to like devote your life to a thing. Whereas my dad was genuinely passionate and my mom worked in education and she was my English teacher in high school, but then she transitioned and even when I was high school, she would always take all my friends' schedules and she would like organize them and be like, no, you need this class and this class and this class. And then like, well, what are you interested in? And she would do like academic, just like during lunchtime with all the kids, like, and then so she eventually got a job in like advisement at a local college. And it was that's all she did was just like, okay, you want to be a nurse? Like, let's talk about that. How are you going to get your classes together to be a nurse? Or, oh, you want to be an archaeologist? Like, what internships, like that kind of stuff. And so she also was like good at her job and interested in it. She went and got it when she was like 50 something. She got a master's in education. So like they kind of didn't have a leg to stand on when I was like, well, I just want to do something I love. Cause that's kind of what they did. My dad just got lucky, then he got a lucrative passion. You know what I mean? My mom was less lucky. Her passion was less lucrative, but she still liked what she did. And so I think that there was that. I think they also at that point they'd seen how difficult college had been for me, like emotionally. And so I think they were like, if I had just been normal, I think maybe there would have been more pushback, but I think they were kind of treating me with kid gloves a little bit at the time. And between my parents, my dad is like much more the dreamy, like, sure, like make a movie. And my mom's like much more practical, which is why their marriage works, because she keeps him alive and then he keeps life interesting. So yeah, I think basically what happened was I took a year off and then took the GREs and got my film school application together. So I applied, like I graduated in May, applied in fall, found out in the spring that I'd gotten into a couple of schools, USC being my first choice. And then they were happy I was coming home to California. So that was a win. And then my mom would just sort of gently be like, well, your scores are good for 3 years. And, it's good to try things. Like you don't want to just jump in and then you regret it. So it's like, you can, why don't you try it? You know what I mean? That there was the gentle, you can always go back to medical school. There was a lot of that for a couple years. And then when I was in film school, I spent a summer in Denver working for free on like a low budget indie feature that got into Tribeca. So I got like an associate producer. I got like a producer credit on this film, and it got
Associate producer credit. Yeah.
whatever that means. I was like production manager and associate producer, some bullshit. And
Yeah. The associate producer credit for people outside the industry is the bullshit honorary title they give you for some sort of help.
yeah, so I was unit production manager, which is the more legitimate credit, but people don't know what that is. But people hear producer, they're like, oh,
Yeah,
which
you're in
is
charge.
well, I was in charge of everything because there was no one there. I was just like buying ice and LaCroix and then like organizing stuff. Um, so I did this thing, this film, and then it got written up in the New Yorker, which is a magazine they understand, and it was like top 10 films of the year, and by this one guy, Richard Brody, who writes for the New Yorker. And I think once that happened, that was like a year or two maybe into film school, I feel like that calmed the temperature a little bit, where it was like, okay, she may not be that dumb. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe she's doing something right, even though it's sort of meaningless, but it's like that was the first time I think that that's when my mom stopped mentioning that film school was.
Well, yeah, I don't think it is meaningless. I think parents, it sounds like your parents, your mother especially, genuinely are concerned about their daughter and what she ends up doing. And film school is something that's out of your mother's control. She gets the medical track, but the
Yeah.
film school thing, that could be anything. That's a mixed bag. But when you end up working on a movie that's called out in the New Yorker, okay, maybe she's on her way. So I can see why she would unclench a little bit after hearing that.
So I think that's kind of what happened. Especially coming from Seventh Day Adventist, like there's this saying of like your guardian angel leaves you when you go in a theater. Like they're not very entertainment focused group of people.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because here you are growing up in the Adventist community and you sound very immersed in it. And then you physically go
I was
somewhere.
a teen minister, yeah.
Yes, you were a teen minister?
Oh yeah.
How did that happen? Wait, back up. Let's talk about that for a second. And then we'll talk about how you kind of branched out in life. How do you become a teen minister?
You're just like, hey, can I be a teen minister? Like, sure. It was like basically the high school kids at our church. If you were, we went out to church every week, and once you were like a freshman, sophomore kind of thing, do you want to be more active in the church? And it was more of like a social group. Like you did some public service things, you do some camping trips, like you do like hikes, whatever.
But did you like preach to younger kids?
Not really.
Okay.
Like it wasn't as proselytizing as it may sound.
Because minister, I'm thinking you're standing up there pounding the podium.
I wasn't like healing the sick and like preaching to the poor. I was like
a little bit like the associate producer credit, but in the church.
Yeah, I was like, hey, fifth graders, Jesus loves you. There's a skate park open this Saturday at 2 p.m. Like that was the level of.
Hey, you were involved. It was responsibility. So,
yeah, I really credit. I think a lot of people come from a religious background. They really reject it. And they're just like too constrictive, and there's a lot of issues and problems I have with the church. But to be honest, it was like a really kind group of people who cared, who, were just working hard and wanted to provide opportunities to the youth. And yeah, so I have a lot of positive things to say about my Adventist upbringing. But I want to caveat that by saying I was the thing that I was supposed to be. Like I was thin and I wasn't queer and I wasn't aggressive and I was academic. I didn't yell at people. Like I just naturally fit into a mold pretty easily. Whereas I think other people, like I had a friend who was lesbian, and those people had much more negative experiences than I did, but I fell pretty in the mainstream mold of what they were looking for. And so I just experienced a lot of good things of people who genuinely care, genuinely trying, and want to create a community and want to create opportunities for the kids of the community, if that makes sense.
Totally. Now, but as you get more immersed in the world of film, how does this impact your spirituality? How does this impact being an Adventist? Because it sounds like you're getting into a realm that Adventists are not real excited about. So was there a sort of a internal conflict going on there?
No, I think they're two separate journeys. I think in the sense of I think it created a lot of concern more for my parents, my mom particularly, because all you hear about Hollywood is just these weirdos, these alcoholics, hedonistic alcoholics doing drugs and sleeping with prostitutes, and you know what I mean. Which is kind of true to for some people. Like it's not like that isn't there. But I think that was much more unnerving for my family. Like I said, I had experiences in like religious theater and religious TV. So there is an entertainment component to religion, particularly like modern day um religion, mega churches or modern day like they're all there's a lot of entertainment for being not pro entertainment, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my journey was more like growing up. Like I had an algebra class. Ms. Mackenzie was my algebra teacher, and she would write the answer on the board at the beginning of every class, and she'd be like x equals 4, or like whatever, y plus 2, or whatever the thing was. And then the point of the class would be like to teach you how to find the answer, which I always thought was very cool. And I think religion was that way, where I was growing up and I had questions or whatever, but I felt like, oh, there's the answer. I don't know how you got to that answer, but I'll figure it out. Like by the time I graduate from high school, or like, well, I'm 11 now, or I'm 15 now. So like, I just need to ask more questions and figure it out. And I think it was more like, oh, I'm not sure their answers are still leading to like the answer that they're telling me. If that was, I think, more my religious journey.
Meaning you started to come up with your own conclusions about life that.
Yeah, well, I think I just like had a lot of questions. There was sort of an answer given to you, like here's how to live life, here's the whatever. And if I didn't figure out why that was the right answer, if I had questions, which questions were very much encouraged to a certain extent. And so I had skepticism or questions or concerns or whatever. But I think I always had a certainty, like, well, I'm just uneducated, I'm young, I haven't figured it out yet, but I'll come to the same conclusion that what they're telling me is right. And then I think the older I got and more out in the world I got, the more I was like, maybe not everything was thought through, or maybe I've done the same math and I didn't come to the same conclusion.
Well, I think that's awfully progressive of a religion to encourage young people to ask questions, because that's not what I've heard from. I was not raised a religious person, but I've heard people tell stories and they were like, no, 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 no. This is, the Bible says this, that's the end of the conversation. And so the fact that you have these critical thinking skills, I don't think it's a coincidence that you've gone on to the journey.
Yeah, and I think there's different experiences within Adventism. Like I don't know if I have a couple friends who live in LA who are ex-Adventists, and I think they've had different experiences. I think part of it's a function of my dad's like a pretty intellectual, open-minded guy, and he didn't convert to Adventism until he was like maybe 30 or something. So he had a whole life outside the bubble. So he wasn't necessarily like wholesale drinking the Kool-Aid on everything. And I think also California Adventism, or Southern California Adventism, is like a maybe more liberal branch of a more conservative tree. Just for context, this is a lot of Adventists talk for a podcast, like not about Adventism, but like, so our our denomination has like different sections, and of just they break it off by area and they vote on stuff. So like where I'm from, they're very pro like women's ordination. So we ordain women in Southern California, but that's not recognized by the church as a whole. And so there's a lot of arguments going on globally about that. But where I'm from, people are way more progressive.
That's another podcast entirely. But I don't mind talking about this at all, because I think it informs who you are and how you made your choices. So let's get back to film school. You were associate producer on this revered film. At what point did you pivot to commercial production?
I didn't ever mean to. I always wanted to be a director, writer, director. I didn't take any producing classes in film school. Like nothing I didn't have to take. I was only ever taking extra directing or extra writing. And like my thesis was a script, like a feature script, and then I also got a scholarship to make a short film. So I directed a thing and I wrote a thing. And that's how I got out of film school. I didn't take any intermediate producing. I didn't do any of that.
So
But
how did you end up as a commercial producer then?
so I had a friend when I was in the beginning of film school, and he's like, he did a Slovakian rap video, and he's like, hey, can you help produce this? And I was like, sure. And it was like kind of my way of just getting on sets for bigger people, was to help produce their, like, to do like just, oh, you're doing something like this Slovakian rap video had like an ARRI camera, and I was like, we didn't get to use that. We're in, you know,
An Aeroflex camera?
no, ARRI meaning like at the time it was like, now it's like kind of old news, but the like the Alexa Classic when that first came out. So there's and then the Alexa Mini. Might have been a mini. I don't even think it was a mini. I don't know, but we're shooting on Alexa instead of like the Sony EX1 or whatever. And so I was like, well, yeah, I want to do this big music video. We had 800 euro from Red Bull to like promote Red Bull for the Slovakian rapper. And so I just helped with that. And then I met a girl who was also helping on that. And then she got some music videos and was like, hey, come help on these music videos. I was like, okay. And then so I did those, and then that's how I got the Denver film that we worked on. And so it just kind of snowballed, and it's like once we started making money, essentially, you know, by the second music video with her, I got like $2,000 or something, or I don't know. And then you know, you're just in the food chain of people where they're like, well, we need a coordinator, we need help on this, we need a production manager. And I liked money. And so I graduated from film school with like, not a great resume, but enough things on it to be employable as some kind of line producer, production manager type.
And now, how much of the work do you get? Because I know the answer. I just want to hear your numbers. How much of the work do you get is by referral?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. That's the business. That's LA. I mean, New York and Atlanta too, I presume. But that's the way it is. Same here. Pretty much everything I've gotten was because I knew a guy or a
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's kind of cool and kind of terrible at the same time. Like, it's such a subjective business that there's like, if I went to medical school or whatever and I took the board exams, you know, here are my board scores. It gives you a point of reference, but there's not a lot of like, is this guy funny or not? I don't know. Like, what do you think is funny? Like,
yeah,
I know a guy who shows up on time. He made me laugh. That sounds good, and I'll hire that guy. You know.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of, especially like with acting, there's a lot of actors who can play the bit parts. So of course they're going to go to Friends. I mean, look at the credits of 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 Parks and Recreation. There are so many Upright Citizens Brigade actors who guest starred on that, and who can blame them for hiring them? You know, good for them for sending the ladder down to help out those new actors and give them some credits.
Totally. Yeah, it's a who you know business, which is like very, I assume as a performer, extremely frustrating.
It is, and it's frustrating until you're on the good side of the barbed wire fence. Then it's amazing.
Yeah, and then you're like, keep that fence up.
Yep. Yeah, I've been on both sides of that. I've seen comedy lineups, and now stand-up comedy especially, because you're not filling a role, you're filling a time slot, and that can be done by anybody. So I've been on both sides of that, where I'm looking at lineups going, how in the hell did that person get this show? And then what goes unspoken in that is there are people on social media looking at posters with me on it going, how the hell did that guy get on that show? So it goes both ways, but we only see the one way. We just see the grass greener over there. We don't realize that we're doing fine where we are too. But when has there been a time since you graduated where you thought, wait a minute, I went to all this trouble to write and direct, and now I'm not writing and directing?
Oh yeah, absolutely, multiple times. I'm doing it right now. So basically, I graduated, and then I was line producing. My first job right after graduation was a low budget indie feature. I was like a line producer on this like $250,000 kind of feature.
And just to explain to everybody, if you can, line producer meaning you're kind of in charge of the money, right?
Yeah, line producer. That's like largely how I support myself is it's like, so if you're the producer or the executive producer, you hand me all the money. You're like, here's $250,000, organize it and hire everybody. So like when people talk about above the line, below the line is like me, I'm the line. So you're the first AC. Like you hire the department head. So here's your art department, here's your camera department, whatever. And then you go and I officially hire everybody. Usually I don't just hire people at random. Usually it's like, okay, who do you want to be your first AC? That guy. Okay, who does the first AC want to be the second AC? So I'm hiring people by recommendation, but if they don't have, like if their favorite people are gone, it's still my responsibility to hire somebody to fill the role. So I officially hire. I would say like on like a commercial, I don't know, 50 to 70 people I hire. And I have a department who also helps me. It's, I'm just doing everything on my own, but officially I am the person who hires and fires. And I'm officially the person in charge of the budget.
Now, is this something when you first started doing this, did you gravitate to it? Did you say, oh, I get this, I like doing this? Or did you just say, I need a paycheck, I need money?
No, just money.
Okay.
Just money and experience and like being on interest, like learning on sets. Um, I I definitely have strengths and weaknesses. I think I have an interest. I just want to be a director, so I'm always interested in like the process of things. So like equipment, like knowing what different lenses look like, knowing what different camera packages do, knowing what different grip packages are, or art department, like what do they actually need to do the thing. So I'm really engaged with that stuff, and so I think I have really good conversations with department heads about what do we actually need versus the money. Like how can we maximize what we need for saving the most money. The paperwork side of things is just a nightmare. I hate it. I hate it so
I'm
much.
sure.
I'm
Now,
not very paperworky. I'm not really that type A. Like I have to be for my job, but I'm not really, and so I struggle.
yeah, I get it. I've seen that side of the business. Now, is it possible for you as the line producer, can you hire any of the above the line talent? Because I know
Yeah,
you want to be a director. Could you
yes
hire
and no.
yourself?
Like so it's well, it's commercial, so it's a bit different. So if it's like, are you talking about proper union commercial, like TV commercial? You're talking about?
Yeah, like if you wanted to hire yourself as a director to get your directing career going,
No, because usually the director gets hired first.
who hires the director?
So usually the director hires me
Okay.
because they like working with me. So for example, there's a guy named Romain. He's a French director, and we just get along really well. I really like him, and I think I do a good job of translating what he wants into the practical reality of what we're doing. So basically, the process of a commercial is like, you've got your tea commercial. Yay, we've got this new tea. The tea company's like, we need to put an ad on TV to let everyone know about this wonderful tea. So then they contact an agency. So then the agency is like, like we want like dark, we want moody, like your tea is aimed at like really angry 85-year-olds from Brazil. Like that's who we want to target. So the agency comes up with like helping define for the client the demographics, the reach, like how are we going to talk to all of these consumers? How are we going to reach the consumer that wants the tea? How are we going to talk to that? And then the creative campaign of like, we're going to have a campaign with a giraffe because 85-year-olds love giraffes or whatever. So then the agency starts looking for directors whose style fits what they want. So in the case of Romain, like he has a kind of quirky surrealism that's super cool that people really like. And he's very clean. So like he's done a couple things for like Apple, like if you know their branding, it's very clean. He's also like that. So basically, so say this tea company is like, Romain's our guy. So Romain is represented by a production company. So if you hire Romain, you have to do Little Minx, the production company. And so, or vice versa, or they're like, oh, this really cool production company, they have all the kind of talent we need. One of the two, they'll pick a company or they'll pick a director to do the thing. So then usually it goes like the director hires the line producer or the production company hires the line producer, depending. They'll take the director's opinion into consideration. So like I think Romain likes me because he likes working with women. He likes the tempo. He doesn't like this just sort of aggro 1980s film style that he doesn't like. So I'm a little calmer and more chill. And I think we have a good shorthand of like, I feel like I understand a lot of what he's asking for. So there's not a lot of confusion and you have to hang out a lot. So there's a lot of like, I think I have a pretty easy energy to be around.
Well, yeah, you seem like it. But
So
now, how do you, during the making of a commercial, how do you reconcile the director's vision with for example, let's say this client, the tea company client. I imagine clients, I'm just guessing some clients can be a little difficult.
Oh
Just
yeah, all of them.
all right,
All of
as long
them.
as we're spilling the tea here.
Um,
Sure. So if a client says, hey, this is going great, except instead of a giraffe, I want 19 rhinoceroses.
well,
At a certain point,
usually you're not going to get that. Like usually the what is being shot is so heavily noted to death before you even get to set. There's usually not a giraffe rhinoceros conversation.
okay.
Um, usually it's like the agency has a very clear specific script that they want. Then it goes to the director, and then we make storyboards of like all the frames we're doing, and then scouting and mock-ups and whatever needs to happen or testing. So it's never like that. It's more like okay, we just did Kettle One Botanicals, like a vodka TV commercial we just did. We have like a product shot of the 3 bottles with this like flowers and a glass and garnish, very pretty. And we put a lens flare in it to kind of just like create this interesting effect around the product. And then there's a lot of discussion both during production and in post of like, is that flare making it blurry? Like, can we take that out? Wait, no, I like it, but like, can we see different versions of the flare? Like, any kind of point of view on things becomes like a point of contention.
Oh yeah, because you've got this extra layer of creative teams going on. It's not just a director arguing with a studio about what a film should look like. It's a
No, there's
director and an ad agency and a client.
yeah. So for example, I did a Panera thing in June, and the level of toastiness of the sandwich was a whole nightmare. So we had our sandwich made. It got shown to agency first. Agency didn't think it was brown enough, didn't like they wanted sharper brown on the side to make it like, oh, warm and toasty. So we go back, we keep getting it approved by agency. Then it went from agency to the client, and the client said, that's way too toasted. It doesn't look chewy. It's got to be like chewable. So then we go back and we do it all again. It took us 4 or 5 hours to approve a sandwich. It was a nightmare. It was awful. So like that's like the director's just sitting there doing like.
Yeah, because I would think if everything's noted to death by the time you get on set, so much of what you're going to do is already preordained. So hopefully you don't have too many of these little arguments. So it must be maddening to think we've had a million meetings. This should all be laid out in a perfect row, and now we're arguing over how toasted the bread is.
But that's commercials.
Okay, that's the
so
nature.
like they had an image that they looked at and they were like, well, we like this picture. It's like, well, that's a photoshopped image. We
And now,
cannot do that.
very strict rules about food and advertising, right?
Totally. So we have to follow. So basically, we had Panera's like chef guide. Their food stylist is on Zoom with our food stylist, with 6 ounces of this, like so everything is, and it's from the Panera. So it's all for anyone watching. Like it's all actual Panera sandwich materials that you would get at any Panera. But they were looking at a photo image from a different Panera advertisement that they wanted to match. But like the Chipotle sauce, for example, on the sandwich in real life is a sort of pale orangish, like a beigey color. And then in the photo, it was like a darker, intense orange, and it was just prettier looking. But we can't switch different sauces because we have to use the beige one because that's what they use. And then in post, you can do some color correction, but it was just hard to go in circles. They're like, well, this sandwich doesn't look that good. I want that sandwich. It's like, well, that sandwich has been photoshopped into oblivion. We're stuck. We have to use this Chipotle sauce. We cannot put orange dye. We can't do anything because then it's not the Chipotle sauce. But I guess there was a Chipotle aioli and a Chipotle sauce. And there was a lot of conversation of, could we use the Chipotle aioli because it's more photogenic on the sandwich, but on the sandwich, they use the Chipotle sauce.
So that's
in the end, we could not use the aioli. We had to use the sauce.
Yeah.
But that's a 30-minute conversation that you're just sitting there.
You have to be a certain kind of person to tolerate moments like that on a set. That's not for everybody. So tell me how often you get work. Can you just call up every director you know saying, hey, I got bills to pay. Can I get on a commercial? Or do these jobs just sort of come and go randomly?
I've never done that. I've never called looking for a job.
Work just kind of comes to you.
It's very unnerving.
Well, no.
Very unnerving.
That's a good thing that work comes to you, right?
It's good, but then you just feel really out of control. So I mean, I have basically, you just start to work with the same people. Like,
Well,
so the director, the French director I was talking about, he moved from New York to LA, and he did a low budget music video, and he needed a producer, and a friend of a friend, like, I did a low budget music video for someone else who knew this girl. Basically, there was a woman was like one of the commissioners or one of the reps on a low budget music video. Then she changed jobs to work for a production company. This French guy came in. That production company was trying to work with him. They're like, hey, we have this low budget music video, but no one would produce it because it was too low budget. So she remembered, oh, that other music video was low budget. Did you like the producer? She asked the director. He was like, yeah, I really liked the producer. It was me. So she called me, even though I never met her before, and was like, hey, can you do this thing? And I was like, sure. So then I met Rama, and we just had a great time. And I like his style. He's a really great director in that he has a very clear vision. He's very articulate about what he wants, but he's also very flexible and collaborative. So he's like, this is what I want. This is why I want it. And then if an art person's like, oh, what if we try this? He's like, oh, cool, yeah, that's awesome. Or like a camera person's like, well, if we do this thing, he'll be like, oh, no, maybe not, but like maybe this direction. And then for me, a lot of conversations are about like, well, we can do this or we can do this. We can afford, we have this much money, like here's what we can afford. And so I hope that, and I think this is true, that like every conversation I have is like, how can I best preserve his vision by organizing the money to do that or whatever. So anyway, so that's how so then he likes me. So then he just calls me on his bigger jobs. And so now he's a DGA director doing big commercials. And so I work with him.
that's how you do it. Good for you.
And then the production company, Little Minx, that he works for is like, oh, well, Ramon likes this girl. So when they have other places they need to slot people in, I've started getting work from them. So that's just how it works. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And good on you for finding this groove, even though it might not be your deepest passion, but at least you're doing it. Now, one last thing. I know you have an eye for commercials. You have a history as a director, which means you have an eye, and you've worked on commercials, which I know are very specific about the look of every frame. I know I'm setting myself up here, but what sort of production design notes would you give for the Joe Dungan talk show?
Well, we talked about this. You're bringing this up not out of the blue, but this is a longer conversation we've had, and I
Okay.
think that you got, well. So I think your current backdrop is a little too bougie. I think.
You know what it is? I'm looking for talk show backdrops and I'm having trouble finding them, which means the internet isn't done yet because these should be easy to find. So I'm just finding every show I kind of put up a random living room. Sometimes it's that one.
I think that one's maybe better because it's more approachable. I mean, I like. Okay, here's the question. Do you want just purely aesthetic? Like, I like the white background. I think it matches whatever frontal light you have on you. Like right now, it's like the light on your face and the light in the back doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense. I was just trying to give. I was a film student also, and what I remember is the 2-3-1 rule for lighting. You get your key light, you got your backlight, and you got your fill light. Now I don't. If you saw this here, the setup.
Well, right now your key light is your right. Raise your right hand. That's your key side.
Yeah.
And then your fill side is your left side.
It's the blinds. I've got the blinds open here. It's getting kind of cloudy this afternoon, so it's not.
No, I'm just saying that if you look in that image, you've got a strong light coming through those windows.
Yeah.
Like in the blue, wherever, like on your left arm, behind your left arm, there's a strong light coming.
Oh yeah,
through
that's just
the fake background.
Yeah.
But then your actual light is coming from the other side.
Oh, it doesn't match at all. No.
So I'm saying that the other space matched your lighting better.
Yeah, I haven't tried that hard to match these things. My feeling has always been, I'm not trying to sell the look of the talk show. I'm trying to sell myself as a talk show host. So the look of the thing,
this is where we disagree, or this is where I think the point of contention is that
bring it. What do you got?
everything has to be a choice. You can't just say like it's just like everything. Whether if not choosing is a choice. So like, why should people watch the Joe Dungan show? You know, like, and a lot of it is your personality, what you're interested in. So it's like, well, I like his line of questioning or whatever. Like that's like the main thing, but everything around that reflects who you are. So for example, I think this blue background is more reflective of you than the white background, because I feel like the white background, if we can switch back to that, I feel like it's a little bit ostentatious or something. See, like I
Okay,
feel like you don't have fur pillows in your
that's a
life.
different one. No, I do not. There we go.
But like, okay, so that feels like it feels intellectual. You're intellectual. It feels like clean lines. I feel like that's a thing. I feel like there's a lot that's good about it, but there's something about how huge the space is that feels a little clinical.
I
And
had to zoom in to make this picture, by the way. The original photo was even larger.
I feel like there's the painting behind you feels like a banker who didn't know a lot about art but spent $50,000. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's like, the restoration hardware chandelier, like um I think that it's not wildly off. It's just not. I just think you should think about, like, is your show a Zoom show? If your show is a Zoom show, you should figure out what your background is and define that. If your show is
Yeah.
not a Zoom show, then you should you think of a space that when you get off Zoom, when I don't know, in
Yeah,
2024,
I know.
when
Well,
calm
I've
down.
crammed this whole thing into my bedroom right now, so it would be horrifying if you saw what was actually going on. I got that. That's just your basic comedic backdrop. I got the Twin Peaks. That's probably
A
copyrighted.
little creepy.
Yeah, I got the green screen, which is extremely generic. I look like I'm in a sound booth or something. But just to show everyone how the sausage is made, there it is. I got my little on the rails there, and there's my my ceiling fan with my light, and then the rest of my bedroom is behind this screen here. So that's
But I guess like that's my point, is that um like your shirt is like little anchors, right?
yeah.
Right, which I think speaks to like, so we again, you know, this conversation isn't coming out of nowhere. It's a, you like process, right?
Yes.
Your talk show is about process. Like, who are people that do things, how do they do them, and why do they do them? So like anchors kind of reflect that. It's like, anchors are a tool. Anchor, like people on boats use anchors. So I feel like your shirt is like a really good shirt for this show because it's kind of like evocative of process.
You know what's interesting about that answer is I do not think about the shirt that I wear ever. All I think is don't wear a green shirt because it'll mess up the green screen, and that's my only thought.
But
So it's
that, but
funny.
that,
It's interesting to me. I bring it up because this is a level of detail and thought that your work requires that I just never think about. So thank you for that. That is kind of interesting. Do you think how much of an effect do you think that this actually has on a viewer? This level of detail?
it's hard to say. I think it definitely has an effect. I really do. Like, I think like that's the difference between like, when you have a celebrity who looks like they just did a self tape and it's kind of shitty and bad. Like, those are not those. There's 10 people standing outside of that cell phone to make it look like that. It's like that effect of feeling casual and intimacy is an intimate is a choice, or like a super well lit, beautiful backdrop. That's a choice. Like everything is a choice, and we're always reading. We're reading into everything. So like, I think your shirt is a good shirt. I think it's like, you look polished, you look nice, but you look approachable. Like it's a little bit like, it's not like so starched that you look uncomfortable. It looks like you've been wearing it a bit, and it looks like it's not bothering you, so you look really comfortable, so then your guest is really comfortable. So I think like all that stuff, like the visual cues you're giving your audience are important, the visual cues you're giving the person you're interviewing are important. All of that stuff's so important. Like the example I mentioned before, not on this podcast, just in person. Megyn Kelly, when she had her talk show, I genuinely think a huge part of her ratings issue was she would wear like a gold bangle, and she would hold her hands just seemed very tense, and there was just some tension in her hands that I could not get over. And not like she's a bad, uh, she doesn't have ugly hands, or and she's beautiful hands, beautiful woman. Um, but I think that she was on a show that needed to have warmth, and I think that she I don't think she's not warm. She was coming from Fox News, which is like a colder, hard, like I'm asking you questions place. But I think when they tried to make her friendlier and warmer, I think what she was holding in her hands, how they styled her, it was like working against her. and it made her seem a little brittle and not approachable. And her show was more approachable. It's the opposite of what happened to Katie Couric. Katie Couric came from, hey guys, like, good morning, like, how's everyone doing? And then they try to put her on CBS Evening News, and everyone's like, you're shallow, you only like superficial things, you're warm and friendly, you're peppy, but you're not intellectual. I think there's a lot of sexism. Like, I think women get it hit way harder than men. And I think both Katie Couric and Megyn Kelly are very smart, very capable people, but those things impact the ratings. Like, and that means that impacts the viewer. So I think, like, we had a conversation, like, should it be a podcast or a TV show? And I was like, well, if you're showing people visual things, you need to think about what you're showing them. Like, they all need to have a reason for being there.
Right.
That was a really long answer. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's stuff that I haven't really thought about that much. And so, I mean, everything you're saying has validity. And you're not the first person to say, make this a podcast, or in addition to.
I'm not saying it should be a podcast. I'm saying you need to have reasons for it not to be a podcast. And I think that, like, for example, there's a classic example in film school of, like, there's a woman talking about vegetables. And she's like, I love vegetables. Vegetables are great. What's your favorite vegetable? And then everyone has to write down their favorite vegetable. Without fail, 99% of everyone writes down carrots. The reason they write down carrots is because on the wall behind her are a bunch of rabbits. So the whole time she's talking about vegetables, you're seeing rabbit imagery. And so your first vegetable that you think of is carrots, because rabbits love carrots.
Wow.
So I think, like, all of those cues feed into, like, whatever the thing is.
One last thing. Did you notice, and this was unconscious also, the tea that I'm drinking, it's in a Christmas mug.
But I think that's a choice. Like I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I think that it's like, that says, like, you're the kind of guy that just reaches for the closest mug, or like, so yeah. I think, like, again, like, I'm not saying you should do a podcast. I'm not saying you should do a TV show. I'm just saying, everything you do matters. Everything in front of the camera, whether it's a choice or not a choice, it is a choice. And so I think it's funny if you're the guy with Christmas mugs talking about, like, computer science with a computer science, like, I think that's funny. And I think that that's a vibe. And I think that actually reflects your personality.
For example, not that I watch it much, but on TMZ, that Harvey guy always drinks out of a sippy cup.
Because he's a giant baby.
Maybe he is. It calls attention to itself. I never understood why, but
you remember it.
It's a choice. Yeah, you're right.
The Joe Dungan show is about process-based conversations with a goofy guy who likes Christmas mugs or kitschy mugs, or, like, maybe you switch it out every week. There's a different mug with, like, a stupid thing on it. Like, that just it gives viewers information. Everything is information. Even if it's not information, it's information.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
you're right.
Like, I think this fridge makes me look successful, and that microwave makes me look not successful. And so the viewer is going to be like, I can't figure out what this girl's deal is.
Wow. See, that's a level of detail I didn't even think about. I mean, the fridge looks new and nice. I wasn't sitting here thinking, wow, that microwave is a little dumpy. I don't know how Christina's doing in life. I mean, maybe on a subconscious level, I was. So a lot.
Yeah. So I think that that's, like, for your viewers, those who like and subscribe this podcast, this show, is going to just tell you, edit that out. For those who like and subscribe this YouTube talk show, I think you need to talk to your viewers and see what they want. And I think you should, like, maybe it is a green screen, or maybe, like, if it's all on Zoom, like, maybe the joke is you always have a background that doesn't make any sense. Like that couldn't be a thing. But I think if you want to bring it, like, once Zoom is done and your in-person interviews, like, do you have a space that, like, people come to talk to you in, or do you go to their space? Are you always like, oh, we're in a wood shop today because this guy's a woodworker? Or, like, I think, like, Terry Gross or someone, a radio person, I don't know if it's Terry Gross, they, like, their subject comes in, like, the interviewee, they sit in a room with headphones, and they're just in, like, this padded room, and they just hear the host through the headphones. So they're sort of in this, like, deprivation chamber. And again, I don't know if it's Terry Gross, I don't remember who it is, so don't quote me, but it's a way of creating an emotional context or an emotional feeling for their interviews. And that's why their interviews tend to be in a certain vein. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but, like, all of that stuff matters. Like the fact that I'm sitting in my kitchen talking to you is affecting what I'm telling you, whether you like it or not. And so I think you have to think about all that stuff when you're as you develop this show, right?
I
Because I feel
will.
like this is the very inchoate like baby days of this
No,
show.
oh
So I
yeah,
think you need to start making choices, seeing how you react to those choices, seeing how your subjects react to those choices, and seeing how your audience reacts to those choices, and then just keep developing from there.
there
It's not
is
about right or wrong, it's about taste.
there is a lot of food for thought here, and you've given me plenty for it. Christina Jobe, thank you very much for all the time. I know we went longer than we thought we were going to go, but hey, this was fascinating.
I didn't know how was it an hour? How long?
It's about an hour. I don't know. I
Okay.
might break this into two. I'm not sure.
I think we nailed an hour.
It was about an hour. I think we did quite well. I mean, clearly there's so much to think about in this realm, and I think it was fascinating how we went from your younger days as an Adventist, and then how you kind of steered away from that, and you went to medical, and then the film, and then I'm doing commercials. So now you're trying to get back on the you're trying to become a director. Ultimately, that's a thing, writer director.
That's the goal. That's what I
Well,
keep
kick
doing that
ass.
stuff.
And since this business is all about knowing people, you can hire me someday,
Oh,
and you can produce the talk show, and then I'll have you on as a guest. That's fair.
thanks. That sounds great.
Thank you so much, Christina
Okay,
Jobe. I will talk to you when I talk to you.
talk to you later. Have a
Bye.
good day.
The shirt with the anchors on it. I didn't even realize what kind of messaging this could be sending when I interviewed somebody. I picked that shirt the same way I picked my coffee mug. It was there. It'll do the job. That's it. Uh, she's not wrong about any of it. I think it is. I think it isn't. Everything is a choice. She said it. Everything is information. So I don't even know where to go from there. I don't know. I think the next episode might look just like this one. I don't know. It's nothing personal about her remarks. I'm just going, I don't have the budget for this. I don't know what, maybe I'll get it. Maybe I'll hunt down a different background, or maybe I'll forget. Maybe by the time of the next interview, I'll be like, I'll just use one of these because I completely forgot about it. And the important thing is the actual interview part. I don't know, but I think that's part of the mystery of life, because you don't even know what you're going to do next, even when you think you know. That something could happen, good or bad. I don't know. I've been derailed by suddenly there's a phone call and I'm catching up with an old friend, or once in a while there's some fire you got to put out. I don't know. But the important thing is I have gotten better at handling uncertainty and rolling with whatever life throws at me. And I'm proud to say I've managed to do this without weed.